Today's message is titled, Peace in the House, Biblical Conflict Management in the Church. I remember a time when two ministry leaders I deeply respected had a falling out over something as small as a missed meeting. What started as a scheduling issue turned into unspoken offense, assumptions, and distance. You could feel the tension in the room. These were both godly people and leaders. But an unresolved conflict had crept in and started poisoning the culture of our team. It was in that moment I realized if we don't lead through conflict, it will lead us somewhere we never intended to go. We often assume the church is a place where everyone should, just get along. But in reality, any group of people, even spirit-filled believers, will face conflict. The question isn't if conflict comes, it's how we respond that reveals our spiritual maturity. And so we see in Matthew 18:15 through 17, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault. Between you and him alone, if he listens to you, you have gained your brother. And so that brings us to our first point of this message. Deal with conflict directly, not through gossip. And we find in Matthew 18:15, Jesus is clear, go to your brother or sister directly. Conflict often escalates not because of what was said, but because of who it was said to. Instead of addressing it directly, we vent sideways, pulling others into a disagreement they were never a part of. And so, in one church I worked with, a leader was upset that they weren't asked to lead a retreat. Instead of going to the pastor, they shared their frustration with half the team. It took weeks to untangle the damage, but when we finally sat down one-on-one, it took 10 minutes to realize it was a misunderstanding. A direct conversation could have saved relationships and time. So in your ministry or team, create a culture where the first conversation is the right conversation. Go to the person, not around them. That brings us to our next point. Choose relationship over being right. And so in Philippians 2:3 through 4, it says, do nothing from selfish ambition, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. Too often in conflict, the goal becomes winning the argument, not restoring the relationship. But Paul challenges us to value people over pride. Maturity isn't proving a point, it's protecting unity. And so during a leadership transition, I disagreed with a decision made by my senior leader. Everything in me wanted to push back. But instead, I prayed, processed with a mentor, and chose to submit to leadership while still sharing my heart with humility. That choice didn't just persevere the relationship, it built deeper trust between us. So before every tough conversation, ask yourself, do I care more about the person than the point I want to make? That brings us to our next point. Don't let silence become division. We see in Ephesians 4:26 through 27, don't let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. Unspoken conflict is like a splinter. It might seem small, but left untreated, it gets infected. Avoiding tough conversations doesn't bring peace, it just delays the breakdown. There was a kids camp leader who pulled away emotionally after a hard season. Tasks were slipping, the team was strained, and it was impacting camp prep. We almost just resigned the role, but instead we invited her to dinner. When we finally listened, we realized she was walking through grief and burnout. That one conversation changed everything. We made adjustments, offered support, and kept that relationship. In your church, don't let silent signals disconnect. If you feel distance, talk. Silence is not always peace. It can be a quiet warning sign. That brings us to our final point. Invite God into the conflict. So in James 1:5 and in Romans 12:18, it says, if any one of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Sometimes conflict isn't simple or quickly resolved. That's when we invite the Holy Spirit to be the guide, the translator, and the healer. Prayer isn't a last resort, it's the first strategy. One of the most difficult seasons I faced was in a district role where I had a different leadership style than the fellow director, the person that came before me. We were clashing. I found myself avoiding them, holding back. But God began to challenge me to not run. I asked if we could meet regularly, not just to talk shop, but to ask each other, how are you really doing? That rhythm didn't just resolve tension, it created unity that made our entire ministry stronger. So we invite God into our conversations, ask for wisdom before speaking, and trust that even if the outcome isn't perfect, peace is always possible on our end, on their end. And so I want to challenge you, church, let me speak from the heart. Conflict will come, but it doesn't have to divide us. It can refine us. I've seen firsthand how unresolved issues can derail a team, but I've also seen how God redeems those moments when we follow His word. So who do you need to talk to? Who do you need to forgive? What tension do you need to stop ignoring? Let's be people who pursue peace, who choose conversation over assumption, and who honor God by how we treat His people. In Matthew 5:9 it says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God."